Welcome home.
Thank you, Marcus. Good to
Hey,
be with you again on this Friday afternoon here, Friday morning for you.
yeah, Friday somewhere in the world, right? And those who are watching this on the repeat, it's good to be with you. Thank you for joining us. Oh, Mark, how are you feeling today?
I'm great. I'm looking forward to chapter 10.
Chapter 10,
Yeah, we're
yes,
getting
yes.
towards the middle point, the crux of our story.
Hmm. So, Kenna has overcome his, not, I wouldn't even say overcome, he's committed to his journey
Yeah.
and he's found some friends along the way. Um, this is the hero's journey, right? He first shied away from the call. And then he said, okay, I'm going to commit to it. Found some friends after failing. And yeah, we're in this new stage of group identity. The hero's journey is always first identity. Who are you? You say, I'm not this. You join a group and it says, who are you? And then eventually you say, I'm not this group. And life says, who are you? And it says, I'm not asking you who you're not. I'm asking you, who are you? And you
Mm.
eventually say, I am. And Kenna eventually gets to that I am, but right now he's in the group identity stage of,
That's true. Yeah, that's true. There's something comforting about a group, right? Doing this together, and I think in the last chapter there was some very helpful input and brainstorming that they did with Professor Amar, right? Because they came to this realization that, they needed to introduce themselves from a very authentic point of view. They needed to really reveal who they are and why they're doing this and what's motivating them. And that is what's going to draw a connection with other people. That's what's going to bring other people in rather than try to, go out there and be an expert, right? And try to convey some important information. I think what they need to do is to show that uh, their realness, right? And that people can relate to that. People can say, like, in your story, I can also see myself. And I think that's what creates community. And that's what will give life to these salons. So that was a very sort of, I think, important moment, chapter 9, when Professor Amar helped them to come to this realization through the human potential house framework, right? The home.
they have to know themselves before they go out, yeah, for their authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was beautiful how Professor Amar did that. He just, for some students, they might have seen it as, why are you testing me? Or why are you doubting me? Or what don't you understand? Whereas for him, he was leading with curiosity, again, creating psychological safety in the place of, hey, let's just, I'll go wherever you want to go. But you
Yeah.
tell me, who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, we've portrayed him a bit as a mentor, but I think he actually is showing up more as a coach, especially in that last chapter where
What do you see as
he's
the difference between a mentor and a coach?
well, for me it's a mentor is a bit more somebody with the wisdom and the expertise and providing input and guidance, whereas a coach is genuinely trusting that the students in this case have all the wisdom and resourcefulness within them, and that the role of Amar is more to bring it out and just to ask questions and to see what's there and to allow them to come to their own discovery, which will then ultimately be the content they need to go out, and bring this salon to life. And I felt like in this last chapter it was much more in that role of a coach.
Okay, okay. I wondered, I mean, maybe we shift, when I say we, meaning you and I, and then those inside leadership positions, we shift between the roles.
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
yeah,
For
absolutely.
me, a coach is someone who's driving someone to a decided upon outcome, and they're going to get there. They're going to do the work. Always a person is going to do the work. And a mentee is a person who holds space while the person is figuring it out to bounce questions off. So, yeah, just a different take on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So this chapter is actually called Mask Off in a Cafe, and this is where the three friends meet in a cafe. Their first salon in a shared space with other people, and they're revealing themselves and being vulnerable. I say being vulnerable; they're just exposing themselves, establishing authenticity, in the cafe, and the topic we're talking about is being authentic in public places. Being authentic in public places.
Hmm.
Anything to say on that before we begin?
Well, yeah, I think the public places thing is, I think, very important aspect, right? Because being authentic in private places is one thing, being authentic in a public place is a different thing. And I think that's worth exploring a little bit. What is the difference? Why is it more difficult, I think, in most cases, to show up really authentically in a public place? Is it somehow more vulnerable? Do we feel more exposed? Um, yeah, there's maybe less safety, when we're with our friends and they know us and we can reveal more of ourselves. So I think it's something very important about being out there in public. It's sort of a coming out. It's like, I'm not holding back anymore, I'm just putting it out there and
Mm,
sharing parts of my life story, right? Because that's what Kenna does. He reveals that he's been following a blueprint that doesn't work for him anymore. It's a blueprint that has been sort of handed over to him from generation to generation, and he doesn't feel
mhm,
like he fits in that anymore. And to be able to really articulate that, I think it's a big step, right, in his growth and his development, and to be able to do that in a public space. I think there's something about making it even more real, right? It's
mhm,
one thing to have the insight and the realization. It's another thing to talk about it to a good friend and say, I realize this. And it's a much bigger step to go out there and like
present it.
lay it out, right, in public. And there's
Mhm,
something that makes it even more sort of as a breakthrough, right, as a moment of transformation. And I think the
yeah,
other important aspect of it is it gives other people permission to sort of check in with themselves and see, is there something in his story, in Kenna's story, that I can relate to, and that speaks to me and to my journey and to my growth and development as well. So I think there's that part of the public aspect that's also very important.
yeah, yeah. To your point, it's when we go out in public, we all have IP, intellectual property. It's what we know. And when we put it out in public, that's actually where it's battle tested. And you actually, is this really what I believe or is this not what I believe? Because it's
Mm.
going to face criticism. Criticism means to be hit. It's going to face receptive, it's going to be received or not. But it's just like, not until it's stress tested do you really know what something is. And we were talking about your character or who you are. Not until you go out do you really know who you are. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's when you really figure it out. But it's when you're willingly going out there, publicare to publish, when you go like this podcast, it's when you
Yeah,
go out
it's
there.
a good example, right? This is really public facing, and true. It is true. It's
Yeah.
us putting our work over the last year, more than a year, that we've been doing sort of behind the scenes, and we've been having similar conversations that have
Hmm.
been stimulating and giving us, the material needed for the book. And now
Hmm.
we are revealing it, right? We are putting ourselves out there and making these conversations public. So I think it's a really great parallel, and
Yeah.
it's starting to feel comfortable now. I have to say, like, the first few times was, even though there's nobody physically here in the room with us, it
Hmm.
still feels like, okay, we're talking to a broader audience, and this is live, and it does something to yeah, maybe what I choose to say, what I choose not to say. And now there's a level of comfort that's coming with that after we've done this now a number of times.
Yeah. And that takes us to our quote actually from the chapter. I love how you said that. There's a sense of comfort, of familiarity. At the end of the chapter, Rosie says, "Let this be a familiar place we can frequently come to. A frequent we can frequently come to where we can take off. Excuse me. I apologize.
Where you can frequently come to. Yes. I think you got it right the first time.
Where we can take off the mask we wear and be real with one another.
Hmm.
In our pre-show discussion, we said that sounds a lot like home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me pull it up here. Um, it's a place where we can come to frequently. Home is a place that's familiar with us. We've come to it again and again and again. When we go to difficult places, i.e., for example, being in public again and again and again, it's somewhat of a second nature. It's like, oh yeah, we know this place. And when you go there in your authentic self, it's, oh, I can go to this place and be me. It's okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Any takes on this, or when you look up and to the right?
Hmm. Yeah. And what does it do? Like maybe we can talk a little bit more about what does this taking the mask off, what does it actually
Entail?
entail? Yeah. And why is it so important? How does
I,
it lead to deeper conversations?
if if you want to get in a psychological sense, there's the shadow self, and then there's the self of you that's seen by everyone. Um, it's funny. What do you value? Do you value having a reputation? What people think of you when they see you? Or do you value knowing yourself, even when they might hold a different reputation for you?
Hmm.
And people have different values, right? And if you're authentic, I can't speak for other people. I'll speak personally for me. I know who I am, and I know people don't know my full story.
Hmm.
And then sometimes when I walk in, they might hold a different story for me.
Hmm.
And then I think to myself, well, don't defend that. Don't fight against that. Don't, I mean, is that me being authentic by not engaging with it? Or do I have to come up and prove myself? And sometimes having to prove yourself, there's this thing called whistling Dixie.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of this idea? Not
No.
whistling Dixie, whistling Vivaldi. This was in Chicago. There was this large black man, and he felt every time he walked down the street, he had to whistle classical music in order to make other people feel good around him, or like say, okay, he's one of the good ones because he whistles Vivaldi. He knows classical music. So then, is being authentic having to present a certain way,
Hmm.
or is being authentic just being you, just being?
Hmm.
It's so many facets, so many ways we can look at it.
Yeah, I think it's I mean for me at least it's definitely being real, taking the mask off.
Sure.
So I connect with that. And that example of whistling Vivaldi, it would be whistling your own tune, right? That would be sort of the authentic version of it. Just whistle your own tune
Mm,
and allow the people to attract, if that's the tune they're attracted to, right? The people will
yeah.
find you. There's something else about the mask off and revealing more about ourselves, about our journeys, our stories, where we come from. It gives it for me, what it does is it takes away the friction and the tension that can come in conversation sometime, where it can quickly lead to a battle of ideas, or the sense of I have to prove my point, and it's either this or it's that. And I feel like
Mm,
when we go deeper into authentic conversation, it's much more about just honoring each other's truth,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I Because you're revealing something about yourself, I can just accept that you look at something differently than I do, because the context is different. your upbringing, your story is unique, and it helps, and I can just be much more at peace with having different points of views on something. Or it might actually help to find common ground, where on the surface it seems like there's friction or disagreement or different views. When you go deeper, you realize, no, actually, we're talking about the same thing. And there's much more
Mm,
alignment than we originally thought.
yeah,
And I think that that's some of
absolutely.
the really the magic that happens when we open ourselves up.
Yeah, yeah. If I may add to that, two things come to mind. The person has to be secure to say this other view is contrary to mine, and that's okay. So it's holding space for a person to hold a different view. And then two,
Hmm.
it's actually even opening the door, allowing that person, and you sit and you listen. Oftentimes, when we come in as a dominant voice, let's say, or a voice with, let's say, control or power, but it's being able to actually stop and say, hey, tell me your story, tell me your perspective.
Yeah,
It's good to see
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Beautiful.
maybe we can go back to the
Yeah.
chapter.
Wherever you want to go.
What happens? So each one of the friends, so Alex, Kenna, and Rosie, they each have an aspect of themselves that they're sharing with the group,
Hmm.
and then it there's something organic that takes place afterwards. It opens something up, right?
You know what? I'm looking forward to the rewrite of this chapter because what the friends do is they present themselves and then they open it up to, and this is how we did it in the class. They opened up the discussion into think pair shares, but the groups would then interact with each other at a small, and the friends walked around facilitating the conversations. And I guess it's somewhat it loosened, melted the ice. It
Yeah,
got the people familiar with each other to
exactly.
say, oh yeah, we are sharing all these different perspectives here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there something specific you were thinking about?
No, I think it's that, the fact that it loosened people and that it wasn't just about them, but they handed it over to the group, to the people who showed up, to also,
Hmm.
do this amongst themselves, right? So it became very interactive, and the energy was able to sort of spread in the salon. And I think that this is really what kicked this initiative off, right? And there was a very different sense that people had when they left the event, right? There was a they felt filled up, right? It was like they experienced something unique, and they were able to, um, yeah, I think to go off with this feeling of, I want to come back to this space again. I want to come back because it's a nurturing, it's a nourishing environment. And so, this is really where the initiative gets launched and starts to build momentum over the next couple chapters.
Yeah. As a teacher, I remember when we would write lesson plans, you think of engagement, and of course, you always want as much learner engagement as possible. So then that's why you would have smaller groups. You would have, and then sharing in larger groups before we share into the whole. And when you do that, the person says, "Oh yeah, my ideas are seen." Too often we resort to passive roles of watching, I think, in this digital age. But how
Yeah.
do we get engaged? Yeah. Our next question is about to get a little bit, I wouldn't say more intimate, but it's going to make it more personal. When was the last time you felt safe enough to remove your mask and share your authentic self with others? What conditions made that vulnerability possible? And we might get into Brene Brown's work on vulnerability if you're familiar, but yeah, when was the last time you felt safe enough to remove your mask and share your authentic self with others? I know I just asked you
Well,
right off the back. Okay, go on.
yeah, no, no. I
Yeah,
mean,
you're
we
good.
spoke about this already a few weeks ago. This is the example that's coming back to me now.
Yes.
The vulnerability that I had when this public talk that I did flopped, right? And where uh, it yeah, there was a sense of failure that I felt, and to be able to face that and integrate that and allow something new to come through that, I think was through vulnerability, right? It was like by embracing that vulnerability and speaking from a place of vulnerability, actually it turned into a strength, right? It turned into something that gave me strength and allowed me to take it's like a rite of passage into into a new phase of growth. So can you bring that question up again?
Yes.
When
Yes.
was the last time you felt safe enough to remove your mask and share your authentic self with others? What condition?
So,
The interesting thing is that I don't know if I felt safe enough.
okay. Talk to
Um,
that.
and I'm not sure if we always need to feel safe enough before we remove that mask and allow the vulnerability to come through. I think
Hmm.
it's maybe even when we do step into vulnerability, in spite of the lack of safety, it's actually that what creates the safety when we do it, when we step into it and we realize how appreciated that is with other people, and it's like, now I feel safe,
Yeah.
right? Because there's an appreciation of the vulnerability. But before you step into vulnerability, no one's going to tell you you're safe. It's okay, you can do this.
Yeah.
It's more like, no, you just have to go and do it. You have to trust that. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. And yes. And
Always, yes, always.
always yes. And what came to mind for me is one. There's I always assume safety. Like there is no threat.
Hmm.
Like you're not gonna die doing it,
True.
right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna die coming on and speaking publicly about human development.
Yeah.
There's no threat. The second thing that comes to mind though is we really don't know if the person feels threatened. And let me explain. When teaching high school English, or when teaching high school, sometimes quietness is they're processing thoughts. It's not like they're shy to do it. Or it could be they may be distracted. That may be the noise. I remember one time the student came to me. I was in the classroom, and I was having a dark moment in my life. And when I say dark moment in my life, my mother was passing from COVID. It was during COVID, and there was tension in the administration or something. And anyways, she came and she said to me, she said, "Ah, they're gonna like you. I don't know why. Just go out and do it." And I was thinking, oh, she thinks that I'm worried that the kids will like me or not. That's not even why I'm upset. That's not even why I'm not speaking.
Hmm.
And I just had to hold that understanding that she thinks it's this, but it's not that.
Hmm.
So sometimes the apparent, oh, this person is threatened, is it's we really don't know until we engage them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as the person, when the
Yeah.
opportunity presents itself, there really are no threats. There, I think,
Well, it's all perceived, right?
perceptive. Yeah.
We can create all kinds of stories in our head about,
Yeah.
and yeah, you probably won't die from it, but being ridiculed can feel as painful. It can
Yeah.
feel very painful.
And, and when thinking about adolescence, remember, we're very attached to our peer group because we're figuring out who we are as we're individuating, but these people know us best. So that's where we find our comfort. That's
Yeah.
why they're very valuable to us. And that's why
Yeah.
that girl was just like, we're going to like you. It doesn't matter. It's like, oh no, I'm I'm an adult. I'm not really looking for your approval or friendship.
Yeah,
But yeah, I understand. We don't want to. We want to fit in.
yeah,
It's yeah. That's how we get status, and that's how we get reputation. Yeah.
yeah. Now, there's all kinds of stories, right, that we make, and I think that's the other thing about authenticity, taking the mask off, is
Okay. Talk to
that
me.
those stories, they get we we get a chance to reveal them,
Mm, okay.
right? And then they don't have as much weight anymore because we can, we can say that, like, yeah, I have this strange fear of um, making a fool of myself, and I don't know where it comes from, and it's just
Mm,
always there. And if it stays in our, it just kind of goes in repeat, right?
yeah.
But if we can tell that out, speak it out and give voice to it and just say, yeah, that's a part of me that is real and that's holding me back. And I want to look at it kind of from a distance, and by putting it out there, by sharing it, I can see it. I can kind of, it loses some power over me,
Just,
right?
mm,
So I think there's something also, that vulnerability and that authenticity, where we can disentangle these stories that don't serve us, right? That are just playing around in our.
mm. There's a story that helps us progress towards our desires and those that stop us from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In these last 3 minutes, I want to touch on this that we said. This is what Rosie says at the end of the chapter. Let this be a familiar place we frequently come to, where we can take off the mask we wear and be real with one another. And when we read that before this recording, we said that sounds a lot like home, right?
Mm-hmm.
A place that you frequently visit where you can just be, you can as my female friends would say, you could take off your your bra strap, or you could just take off your shoes and just spread your feet. You can be you,
Yeah.
you can be authentic.
Yeah.
Um we can do that at home. Are there public spaces for us to do that? Are there public spaces for our youth to do that?
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that we can make, like, home is a concept, right? Home is it's a, like, a public space can become home, right? We can treat it like home. We can create the conditions of home there, anywhere. Um, a house is more of a physical space, and a home is more of uh, an energy, an atmosphere.
Mm.
And I think that that's sort of the beautiful thing, is that we can, it can be transported. It can come alive in public spaces as well.
If we're in, if we're intentional
Intentional about it. Yeah.
collectively to create that space.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes one person as a leader, as a facilitator, to say, I'm creating the space for us, and then other people latch on. And the inverse is true.
Yeah.
If from the leadership we say, it creates a hostile environment, a VOCA environment.
Yeah. There are things that can be done that are kind of symbolic, but I think they influence the space quite a lot.
Yeah.
And we do this, when we're doing workshops. Like, we're very intentional about setting up the space in a circle, for example. Removing tables and having a setup in a circle. Very intentional about bringing in some nature, whether it be a flower or a plant or something, symbolically representing nature. And these little touches that we can do, and it's very deliberate, very intentional. They do something to the space, and they do something to how people feel when they enter the space.
Yeah.
And I think it's often not that difficult, but it does require intention and being deliberate. Um, I don't know if Maria Jose is tuning in today, but she is the master at intentionally creating these
A
spaces, and creating homes, right? Making places feel like home. So, there's some people who just have that natural gift to do that.
you said intention 4 times there, yeah. And what I think about that is there's always tension, and we're putting it in, and you're creating
Mm,
that tension towards comfort. We're actually saying, settle, be at comfort, be at ease,
yeah,
intentionally creating that. That's beautiful, Mark. Beautiful.
yeah,
Well, yeah, let this be a place that we can come to and be authentic. We've done it for over a year. We're doing it in public now.
yeah.
And I think we're intentionally wanting to create spaces for that, to create conversations with young people and their educators. Um, yeah, always, I always say this, but good to have met you along the journey. And I look forward to next week when we talk about our next chapter, when
Chapter 11, the ripple effect.
the ripple effect. It's all energy, and then it's also waves. So the ripple effect, how it's going to roll out.
Yeah.
Right? Any thoughts before we finish?
No, just yeah, to anyone who's listening in afterwards, tuning in, feel free to reach out. This is also a conversation we'd like to continue having, whether it be on LinkedIn or email or whatever. If you're interested in education, if you're involved in education, definitely, we're always open to connect, to share, to discuss, and to take this work forward.
Yeah, thank you. You just reminded me we need to have a call. Uh, sh- uh, I'll talk with you after the podcast, but yes, you're right. All right. Welcome
Thanks,
home.
Marcus.
Thank you for coming home, and everyone out there, be blessed. Until next week.
Thank you.